Intro. After going over the 1900s, there was a lot that happened in that decade, and there's always a lot more that's going to happen in the following years. That's the point of history. There was a lot that happened in the 1900s, so you may not remember it all. So let's go over that real quick. Now that we have that assembled in our mind, let's go forward a decade, since it seems like more has happened in the world. A lot to see, a lot to cover, in quotes, and a lot to unfold, really, because our history is shaped by events. The first year of the decade, it really isn't anything ever too big. This one really just starts with a day comet if you're into space stuff. Don't expect to ever see it again because it only comes around once every 9,200 years, unless you're watching in the year 11,110. If so, congrats, we apparently beat global warming, I guess. But then Paris kind of floods in this time as well. Paris, one of the major Western civilization cities, had over 200,000 people flee from it because of the flood. That's a lot of people to run from the region because it all started when the Seine started rising in sea level. It rose to about 26 feet over what it should have been, which meant that a lot of good architecture like train lines and all this stuff got destroyed in the process. Luckily, no death was happening or occurred during this flood, since it did last a week, so that's a long time for a flood, but luckily no death, but some injuries. So it looks like a lot of people were able to get out of there, but a lot of homes were destroyed and it caused over $1.5 billion in damages, accounting for today's money. Also noted is a disease could have broken out from debris and stuff, but it didn't, luckily. Later, unrelated, Morocco let French soldiers train in certain parts of it. Whoa. Moving on from French things, let's talk about slavery in China, which was made illegal in March. This is a big move since China has had slavery legal up until this point, and considering it's one of the oldest civilizations in the world, it's probably had it for a while. That while being the Shang dynasty since 1600 BC, so well over 2,000 years or about of slavery. But wait. Remember that comet from earlier? Not here, but a different one? Halley's Comet was very close to us, and that caused mass panic. We were on the tail of the comet, but we didn't hit it. It didn't hit us. So panic may have started, but it was one of those panics that ended up being nothing too serious, as we're still here and breathing, right? Mark Twain dies on April 21st, the day after the Funny Weed Day. That's a famous author, gone now, so don't expect more books from him. But weirdly enough, he did have a connection to the comet because he was born in 1835 during the comet's appearance, and he thought he would also die when it comes back, which did happen. That's when he died. Then the Union of South Africa is formed, so it's kind of split off from the Dutch people who colonized it earlier. So big news for them. Moving up the world from the south to the north, Charles Royce flies across the English Channel and becomes the first person to do so without stopping. But luckily, this can also be done by taking a Zeppelin. The D-Lag, which I'm not saying the German name for, had a flight that was 9 hours long from Friedrichshain to Dusseldorf. Weird town names. It wasn't a plane or anything, so not that many people were able to board the flight. But wait for the entire summer vacation, because then we get to the Japan-Korea Treaty of 1910. You might be wondering what it does. It basically just gives Japan the power to rule over Korea, making it part of the country instead of a protectorate like before. Don't worry, this stays for a while. And then we can check in on Portugal. We see they're now a republic. There goes King Manuel II to England. Don't worry about him. Hopefully he comes back, or he might die. Who knows? He could have been on his way to see the first infrared photos. So who knows, since those were in England. But let's make sure Rama V isn't dead. Okay, he's a little dead, Moving on, now the Mexican Revolution begins because of the overturned results of their latest election by Francisco Maduro. I butchered that name. Then at the end of the year, there's a coal mine explosion in Lancashire in England with only one survivor. 344 people died though, so not a good mortality rate, but it's whatever. Starting the year off with something really cool. That being the first Monte Carlo Rally. It's still around today, so glad to know it started back all this way. Now, for where it's located, let's just say Afro-Eurasian area primarily is where it takes place. Never really in that western hemisphere, probably due to that big ocean that separates the continent. Then we go across said ocean. Let's check in on Haiti. And the revolution is being suppressed because a general was captured. Well, poor General Montreal Guilherme. I butchered that name as well, but that's too bad. I don't know too much about him, but probably a good general. Plus, General Millenard is also killed 2 days later. But let's look at the positives that happen a month later. International Women's Day is celebrated throughout Europe for the first time ever. This happens on March 19th, but 6 days later. I'd recommend not going to work if you work at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. It just got burnt down, and ignore the harsh conditions that were happening there. Those don't matter. The fact that all the workers were trapped there totally had nothing to do with like them dying and all that. The trial for the factory owners would commence later in the year, so you have to wait for that. Then in the Mexican Revolution, they take Agua Prieta. Then they commit a massacre of 300 Chinese citizens living in Mexico. But good news if you're trying to get into the oil business. Standard Oil is broken up into 34 different companies. But this is based on region and activity, so there's a lot of things that it's split into. You may know some of the new companies as those are Exxon, Chevron, and many more. I'm not naming them all. Just don't question their business practices. We don't need to worry about those yet. Don't ask them about Venezuela. Then the first Indy 500 is won by Ray Harrouan. Then just skip by a little bit into the year, since it's just boats that are new and all that. Whoa. Probably just going from England to the US or something like that. That is all they do. That is all they do during this time. That's how they mainly go. But anyways, in July, the month, Machu Picchu is rediscovered in Peru. New wonder discovered in the world. It's like Civ 6. Then the Mona Lisa is stolen from the Louvre Museum that it's being held at. Let's wait a little bit before it actually gets returned. But if that happened today, they would try to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, let's be honest. And somebody would buy that. But luckily, it wouldn't be anything from Russia, as they're dealing with their own crisis. You might be wondering what that is. Their prime minister, I'll call him Stolypin. Probably not even how you pronounce that. But he's assassinated by Dmitry Bogrov. This also happens in Kiev, which was in the Soviet Union back then. Italy declares war on the Ottoman Empire. China gets a new national anthem. Just strides across the world, really. Just ignore the uprisings and the little bomb attacks that are dropped in the next month. That doesn't matter. Chevy is now in the market business. Big news for anyone who wants a car that goes 20k miles before breaking down. A standard that they still keep today. I'm just kidding. Do not do anything to Chevy. Before the real big news, the Omega Psi Phi, which sounds like a Dr. Seuss fraternity, is founded. But in big news, Mongolia is now its own country. Yay! New country discovered. Geography nerds better start remembering that one. Then the team that was heading towards the South Pole reaches the South Pole. And the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory owners are found guilty of manslaughter. Good, there's a conclusion to that story, and it's a good one. Then the Lackawanna Cutoff Rail is built in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Goody! more ways to get around. I really hope trains become the main way to get around places in this rich country. After electing Sun Yat-sen last year, in 1911, the last day of 1911, this year, the Republic of China becomes a true reality as they have a fun flag. It's full of colors and all that fun stuff that makes you want to go there. But let's not do that. We have a new state to go to, that being New Mexico, which is now the 47th state of the U.S. Don't worry, we'll update that flag eventually. Then the rails that connect Key West, Florida, to the main peninsula are finished. That's right. More trains. Yes, more trains. This is crazy. After this, the Qing dynasty is gone completely after Puyi is taken out in favor of the Republic of China. So now the government's been fully transferred over for now. Then let's check back in the US. Oh goodness gracious. Why is there another one? Arizona is now the 48th state of the US. Which you know what that means? 2 more remain. But don't think they'll come soon. They won't. You'll have to wait for those ones. Then Italy and the Ottoman Empire have a little feud going on that continues for a while. Nothing too huge right now. Just Italy and the Ottoman Empire going after each other like school kids. Let's hope that doesn't lead anywhere important. We then hear about the success of landing at the South Pole. You know, news travels slow around these parts. But also the Girl Scouts are formed. They're still around today, if you're wondering. I think that's one of the main organizations in America that's still around for kids. That and the Boy Scouts as well. So at least there's some 1910s history left. The mayor of Tokyo, Yukio Ozaki, gives 3,000 cherry blossom trees to the United States during this time as well, making sure that there's a symbol of friendship between the United States and Japan. As they would say in Japanese, kawaii desu, or something like that. Anyways, what's not cute is the tragedy. The Titanic sinks on April 12th, 1912. We all know the story behind the Titanic sinking, so I don't think it needs review at this point. Jack and Rose, all that stuff. So let's move on to what happens 3 days later, after a hybrid solar eclipse. That is, Fenway Park opens in Boston. Oldest baseball park in America, I've heard. That's kind of how they market themselves as well. Then in Sweden later in the year, they host the 1912 Olympic Games. Then you'll never guess who wins. Well, you could or couldn't. It's kind of mixed. By that I mean the US won the most gold medals, but Sweden won the most medals overall, beating the US by one single medal. So take that how you will, honestly, but it could go either way. Luckily though, this is also when Alaska becomes a territory of the United States. Not a full state yet, just a little off-land. Then a cyclone, named after the antagonist of Mean Girls, hits Canada. But wait, hold your horses. The Emperor of Japan just died. Time to enter a new era of the Japanese calendar. This calls for another Swiss railroad. Specifically, the Jungfrau Railway, which is built at one of the highest elevations, making it the most high up railway. This is a big win for engineering. The first Eagle Scout, also unrelated, gets his badge right before the Ottoman Empire agrees to demands for the Albanian revolt. Then soon after, the First Balkan War begins, when Montenegro declares war on the Ottoman Empire. This is an assassination attempt on Theodore Roosevelt, and would you look at that? Italy and the Ottoman Empire signed a treaty together to end their war. Hopefully that also lasts. Anyways, the US election just came and went, and it looks like Woodrow Wilson won it. Should probably know why this is, and that's because of our old friend, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt made his own party, and made the genius decision to run as that third party, thinking he would win against Taft and Wilson. But this ended up just splitting the votes between the Republican Party and the Bull Moose Party. You all gotta know that when you run a third party and you're dedicated to one side, then you're not gonna fully win the majority vote. That's not how that works. Wilson's now president, but now Albania is independent from the Ottoman Empire. This is right before an armistice is signed that pauses the war until February of the next year. But also ecstasy gets patented, but in more important news, trams. Trams in Boston on the elevated rail. And also vitamins are discovered. It's a big day for science. Some more First Balkan War stuff happens as Greece never agreed to the armistice, just everyone else involved. That means Greece is really just playing by its own rules at this point of the war. Some more First Balkan War stuff as the Ottoman Empire gets new power after a coup. Grand Central Terminal is implemented right as the 16th Amendment is implemented in the US. The 16th Amendment being the one every person loves, being an income tax on every American, just because prohibition is going on and back then Americans drank a lot of alcohol. So they need a new way to make money. By the way, this kind of made them more money overall. Tibet became independent around this time. The president and vice president were forced to resign of that region. Don't look at what happened to them 4 days later. Anyways, Joseph Stalin is now exiled to Siberia. Women's suffrage happens at Washington, D.C., and then bureaucracy happens when labor and commerce are split into two separate departments in the U.S. government. Don't worry, the First Balkan War is still happening. It's still there. Dayton, Ohio gets flooded, and a lot of homes are destroyed because of it. That's probably gonna cost a pretty penny over there. Then another amendment gets signed, which means the senators are voted in by the people, not the legislative branch of each state. Then, the Rockefeller Foundation is founded by a $100 million donation from John Rockefeller. You would have never guessed that. Then let's get to the London Treaty. The First Balkan Wars ended and Greece has gained the land of Epirus it didn't have. Since, it really needed it. It really did. But also, Albania is now recognized as its own country. Then we get a Greek-Serbian treaty. Let's not worry about that right now. It's not going to come up later for sure. Women's suffrage is also enacted in Norway. That's a big one. Then we have to worry about the treaty. The Second Balkan War begins when Bulgaria attacks Serbia and Greece. Then Romania declares war on Bulgaria. And also, Death Valley hits the highest temperature ever recorded on Earth, naturally. That temperature being 134 degrees Fahrenheit. Some more Second Balkan War stuff until a month later when the Treaty of Bucharest is signed. But before that, the city of Chongqing claimed independence before the rebellion was put down. Then the thing we all use in our homes is made, that being stainless steel. Then nothing happens for a while. Then the ADL is formed, which is the Anti-Discrimination League. It's formed in Chicago. Then the Treaty of Constantinople is signed. So now, no more wars will hopefully come. But let's look at what's happening in business. The assembly line is started as Ford starts implementing them in factories. Then guess what? Remember the Panama Canal? Yep. It's now complete. Woodrow Wilson blows up the last part of the canal, meaning it's officially opened. Yay and yippee all at once. Then Huerta is elected president of Mexico, and the Lincoln Highway is now an idea. Great stuff so far, other than the fact that Gandhi is getting arrested in India. Then the Raker Act is signed in the US, and also the Federal Reserve System is made. News about the stolen Mona Lisa. It's back at the end of the year. Other notable things that happened in 1913 is Prada is made, but we also have a benchmark for how much trade is worth. Comparing any time to now, in 1913, trade is worth about $38 billion. That's your benchmark. The year is not off to a good start as the Sakurajima volcano in Japan explodes. The explosion was caused by an earthquake and then left the island attached to the Osumi Peninsula. The fourth Prime Minister of Russia, who was named Vladimir, since that's a common name, I guess, for leaders in Russia, is dismissed by Tsar Nicholas II. This is because he can't control the press, and he wants the press controlled. So because of that, he's replaced with Ivan Goremkyan. I messed that name up, but I don't know how the Cyrillic alphabet goes. And so for the second term of Tsar Nicholas II, that's who he has in his prime ministership. In other news, the Lincoln Memorial starts construction, the copyright system is made, and so is the sister to the Titanic, the HMHS Britannic. But wait, to all those who love St. Patrick's Day, this is when green beer is invented by Thomas Curtin. Just strides in humanity. Hopefully the Britannica doesn't have anything bad happen to it. The first successful blood transfusion that's made using a blood thinner happened. So, good news. We can now have more health stuff. But then the Tampico affair happens. This is what happens when U.S. Navy troops came to pick up materials from Mexico, but then were captured by the government over a misunderstanding. Of course, Woodrow Wilson would want military action on them and goes to Congress for it. Then the U.S. occupies Veracruz for a little bit, and because of this, Mexico ends diplomatic relations with the U.S. But all that matters is the Afrikaans language is now officially recognized. Some more stuff that happens, and then bam, Paramount Pictures is created. Surely won't be one of the motion picture companies that dominates the field through, let's say, means. Greek genocide, and then the constitutionals demand Huerta surrender to them as they take the city of San Luis Potosí. And then it happens. The event that sparked it all happened on June 28th, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Little did Gavrilo Princip know that he would cause World War I starts when Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. This causes a bunch of different alliances from all over Europe to draw so many lines. Alliances happen, and that's how we come up with the teams we do. The United States is not involved yet, by the way. First shots are fired in Austria-Hungary by their navy near Serbia. Then Russia goes for full mobilization, which means the German Empire, which is just Germany, don't think it's really complicated, declares war on Russia. Then everyone's stocks in America are affected for at least a day as the New York Stock Exchange closes because of the war. It means they can't get money and cool profits from European markets. I can't exploit my dang workers in my dang other countries? What's the point then? Then after putting soldiers in Luxembourg, hope you know that's a country, Germany declares war on France, who's Russia's ally. Then Germany invades Belgium even though they are a neutral country. This causes Britain to join the war against Germany. Then Germany actually declares war on Belgium. A few more lines are drawn between Austria, Hungary, and Montenegro right before the cool Zeppelins from the previous decade start dropping bombs on Liège in Belgium. After a lot of warfare, the new introduction of aquatic warfare, Germany starts to go into Belgium and occupy Brussels, which is the capital of the country. So, not good news for Belgium. But Pope Pius X has also died. Very sad news. But don't worry, guys. Japan has declared war on Germany. You may not know why, but don't question it. Then Moron Village. No, hopefully that does not mean Moron's Village, because it does sound like it, is taken by German troops. So much more warfare to get to the new treaty towards the Triple Entente, which is just Britain, France, and Russia. All the treaty really says is that none of them can make separate deals for peace with the Central Powers. This really is just to show that they actually care for each other and not like being selfish. Then luckily, we have an allied win in the form of the First Battle of the Marne. But then Turkey and South Africa declare war on Germany. Then the Federal Trade Commission is made by the U.S. By the way, still not in the war. The US is so far doing good at staying neutral, then the Germans are able to push back the Russians on the Eastern Front. But then the people who assassinated Franz Ferdinand are put in prison. But Princip is not old enough to get the death penalty, so he gets 20 years instead. Then Britain and France declare war on the Ottoman Empire, which is on the other side of Europe. So good luck getting to them. Britain actually annexes Cyprus at the time, so they actually have land near the Ottomans. But even amongst all the mess, new fraternity unlocked. Alpha Phi Delta is founded at Syracuse, even though war is going on. Then, right before November ends, the New York Stock Exchange reopens. But also, Egypt becomes a protectorate of England. So, there's luckily a Christmas truce, but that's unofficial on the Western Front. Mainly just between the British and German soldiers, though, so that's good. They love their festive holidays. Not looking off to a great start for the year, a sunken ship and a train ambush for the World War. Then, women are rejected the right to vote in some areas. Russia then defeats the Ottomans in the Battle of the Skirmish. Even though that sounds like some battle out of the medieval era, it's probably an important battle in the war. Then we get some action in the Pacific Theater. Not with the US, but with Japan and China. Specifically the 21 demands that Japan sent to China. This declaration basically just says that Japan's power in terms of land and influence will continue to grow in China and the surrounding areas. This time also taking land from China in the process, not just wanting influence. Malawi tries to become an independent country through uprising, but the British strike them down. That's not how you deal. That you gotta play ball if you want to be a country, I guess, around this time. The US decides to make the telephone's alpha version at this time. Was Alexander Graham making the telephone. This was between him and his assistant, who was on the other side of the country in San Francisco. But not too much time to celebrate because the Ottomans start raiding the Suez Canal. Then a lot of war stuff happens, but also a movie comes out. What movie? The only movie that Woodrow Wilson really loved. It's called The Birth of a Nation, which is full of racist stuff and is essentially just a racist movie. It glorified the KKK and made them seem heroic when they weren't. That's the gist of it, but then there's genocide against Armenia. So, a lot of racist stuff going on. And this happens when the Ottomans start moving, or around the time the Ottomans start moving soldiers from Armenia to theirs. Then they start deporting the Armenians from the Ottoman Empire. They saw them as an existential threat to the country, and that they betrayed the Ottomans by separating. But then some more stuff, and bam, the German U-29 is sunk by a British ship. But luckily Pluto, the planet, is also photographed, though it is not a planet yet. It's just in the photography lab or something. Then Germany starts using poison gas on the Western Front. Luckily, there's a switch in global dynamics. Italy leaves the Triple Alliance, which is the Central Powers, and secretly joins the Entente Powers for some land of Austria-Hungary. This is part of the London Treaty they signed. South Africa fights against the German side, and the west of it was troops led by the Prime Minister of South Africa. But then the big moment in sea warfare has come. The Lusitania has been sunk by a German U-boat. It's a British ship, and Germany did this thing called unrestricted submarine warfare, meaning they just kind of attacked any and all ships they could. Italy officially joins the Allies, and also China accepts Japan's 21 demands. Then Armenians are officially deported from the Ottoman Empire when the Tessar Law is signed. Portugal gets a new president around this time as well. But 15,000 Armenian people from the Ottoman Empire are killed by Turks and Kurds, then 17,000 more just by Turks. Then South Africa occupies the German side of it. Then Russian troops retreat on the Eastern Front through Poland. And Haiti is now occupied by America, since that seems to be a common theme of America. Then Serbia gets promised some land if the Allies win against the Central Powers. Then Britain uses poison gas for the first time, copying Germany's tactic. They do this in the Battle of Loos, which is for the French town of the same name. Just gotta get it back from the Germans, I guess. Ignore all the casualties. Then Bulgaria enters the war. Immediately, frame 1, France declares war on them. Then Russia and Italy, yeah, not looking good for them. Maybe they just should have stayed out of the war at that point. But over in the US, Mexico's government is recognized as de facto. The war continues to be fought in Europe as racism comes back in Georgia, the state, not the country, due to the second founding of the KKK on Stone Mountain. Albert Einstein also presents part of the theory of general relativity. And to end off the year, Woodrow Wilson gets married while still president. Whoa. That's drama. That's tea. That's what you put in a newspaper. The British and French failed to take Constantinople from the Ottomans. The Gallipoli campaign failing after the last British troops leave the Gallipoli Peninsula. But next month, the Battle of Verdun starts after a month-long plan. Then more stuff was World War I, was the Ottomans and the Allies, but then 12,000 American soldiers were sent to the Mexican border by Woodrow Wilson. They were trying to get Pancho Villa. Then, since Villa is one of the most hunted men apparently, they even crossed the border to find him. Specifically, a 7th and 10th Cavalry go to hunt him down. The SS Sussex is sunk. Yes, that is a lot of S's. But what does this actually do? Later in the year, the Sussex Pledge is made, which is Germany saying to the US that them attacking all these random passenger ships will stop. But this is after the toggle light switch is made, of course, which is really ironic because the Sussex Pledge is literally just a toggle light switch, and now it's on. Egypt starts their occupation of the Sinai Peninsula also, and they kind of just keep it up until now. Then a boat in China goes down and kills 1,000 people. But the Easter Rebellion happens next, so we don't go to Ireland during this time. It basically meant a bunch of groups in Ireland wanted an Irish republic, but it just ended up with them surrendering to the British. Then the Germans' attack was gas on Britain and Irish troops at Harlech. It kills a lot of people due to the density of the soldiers there. The British also lose to the Ottomans at Kut al-Amara near the Tigris River. But in other news, the US invades the Dominican Republic. Just ignore that, for history's sake or something like that. Have you ever been so confident you would win a war that you drew up a plan on how to divide a country after you defeat it? The British and French sure have. They draw up the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which states that the Ottoman Empire is supposed to be divided up in the spheres of influence are given between the British and French. This sure won't have any consequences in the future in the Middle East. Don't look at that stuff. That doesn't matter now. But what does matter is British ships maintaining the seas after the Battle of Jutland. Even though the battle went nowhere, it doesn't matter. Britain still rules the seas, which is all that does matter. Anyways, the Boy Scouts now exist and are implemented into the US. Everyone put a smile on for that one, a big red smile. And also, the next big battle is coming up. That being the Battle of the Somme. This one being on the western front of the war instead of the eastern front. Luckily, we now have Boeing as a company. What would we do without them? Though it's under a different name now called Pacific Aero Products. South Africa also experiences a big loss during this time when 766 people die in the Battle of Delville Wood. Then a bombing in San Francisco happens against a parade that says we should join World War I. Ignore that. We don't need the... No, don't look at that. Don't. The US gets bombarded again when German agents burn down a building that makes bullets and other things to send to the Allies. New national park in California called Lassen Volcanic. Now on to the more lines that are drawn in the war. Peru stays neutral, Romania declares war on the Central Powers, and then Bulgaria declares war on Romania. Okay, you got that? Okay, good. Anyways, tanks are now used in battles. Not fully, but they are an option now. Also, we have the first billionaire. You'll never guess who it is. That's right. It's John D. Rockefeller. Also around this time, the beta version of Planned Parenthood is founded. So glad to see that, since it offers good services. Also good news for workers. If you were a worker back in the ye old days, then you never really had a regulated time that you had to work. This would lead to you working way more than you should legally be allowed to. Now we have the typical 40-hour work week that is still used today. The first one of those appeared in Western New York around this time. Then an election happens. Woodrow Wilson wins the 1916 election based on the idea that he kept us out of World War I and didn't bring war. Now remember that. Don't look at Bucharest, though, because it just got taken over by Central Powers. This is after the Battle of Somme is finished, but before the Battle of Verdun is finished. So place that on your mind timeline how you will. You may also be wondering why there were no Olympics, even though it's an Olympics year. Simple answer, the war. But the longer short answer is they were going to be in Berlin. And I don't think that would have fared well for them. Starting off, 1917 was a bang. Because United States expansion, it's at its prime right now. First we get the U.S. Virgin Islands after buying them from Denmark. But they're not official yet. And then Woodrow Wilson says that there should be peace without victory in Germany. Still not in the war yet. So still keeping promises on that part. But also the search for Pancho Villa comes to an end as well. Also, unrestricted submarine warfare is back. So the Sussex Pledge is no longer a thing. The light switch just got turned off. Don't go on any boats during this time. That's all I'm saying. It's not looking good for German-American relations because the Zimmerman Note is released to the American public. This is the note that was originally meant to go to Mexico and their government, so they would declare war on us. Don't know why Germany would do this, but, it happens. It happened. That's all that matters. This kind of upsets the American public, which a day later also includes people living in Puerto Rico. More lines are broken and riots break out in some starving cities, but at least the Virgin Islands are now officially a U.S. territory, not just purchased land. The U.S. then declares war on Germany, 4 days after Congress was asked to. Brazil also looks like they're going to cut Germany off. Then the propaganda for the corpse factories come out in Britain. These basically just said that Germany would use dead bodies to make usable materials. But don't worry, this is just propaganda, nothing serious. But this is a cool story to tell your kid at night if you want to scare them right before Halloween. And now conscription can happen in the U.S., probably just due to its increasing efforts to defeat Germany in World War I. This is only for people who signed up, though, and also made it so that people couldn't take a sub in for them. But back to battle. The British explode German lines and kill 10,000 people was their ammonal mines that they set up. You'll never believe who just joined the Allies. You'd be right if you guessed Greece. So hopefully they would win the war, or they help win the war. But if you live in Bisbee, Arizona around this time, you may not want to be a mine worker. The people who are on strike just kind of got deported illegally, probably for being on strike, was the IWW. Whatever. There was a silent parade in NYC to protest the St. Louis Massacre, which was a series of attacks between black and white Americans that caused a lot of property damage and forced a lot of African Americans out of where they lived. The New York Guard is also founded around this time, so now they have a state police type of deal, which protection is good. The Republic of China declares war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, so nobody is on the side of the Central Powers. Canada gains the right to conscription, as well like the U.S., but wait, let's take a look at Russia. Russia is now declared a republic. Kinda crazy. But if we look at the Ottoman Empire, it looks like they're starting to collapse. Valmody is taken by the British, so it's not looking good for the Ottoman Empire. And then Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare leads to bad news for them because, bang, a Brazilian ship is sunk, causing Brazil to join World War I against the Central Powers. The Third Battle of Gaza begins, but also Zionism is invented. So that's a pretty eventful week with a lot of conflicting messages, really. That's 1 week. Major changes in Russia as well, as the October Revolution happened in November. Don't worry, it's only called this because they haven't switched to the new system or calendar yet. This revolution really does change Russia to be closer to the modern day as we know it. This also causes the Russian Civil War, but also the Night of Terror happens in the US. This is when the suffragettes, who were imprisoned by force into physical assault by the prison guards, rebelled, and those were horrible things that happened. And so they stood in front of the White House with their signs and stayed there in silence. I mean, that is kind of terrifying. It's menacing. Ukraine has also now made a republic. In the same month, Russia tries to get peace terms with Germany. Also, Romania's out of the war. Whoa. Lines are being cut up due to the armistice it signed with the Central Powers. Also, more railroads are built in America to get war supplies over to the war effort quicker. But another cool thing that happened is the encyclopedia is now officially a thing. Let's go, the first version. Everything starts out with something happening at the start of the year. This one being the Spanish flu epidemic starting in, you guessed it, Kansas. But that's nothing to worry about right now. Let's get to the 14 points, which is just a basic way to get peace that would totally not cause any issues if implemented. Also around this time, the Soviet Union is made, officially. And then the Finland Civil War starts, but I think it gets overshadowed by another larger war that impacts a lot more countries. Women's suffrage also makes strides in the UK because at this point, women over 30 can vote. Still not everyone yet, but still progress. Then on Valentine's Day, Russia switches over to the Gregorian calendar, so they're now caught up on the right day. Let's go. The next month, Russia ends their involvement with the war after signing a treaty with the Central Powers, but somehow the Central Powers get another country on their side. That one being the newly independent Finland. I don't know why it would join, but they do. They do them, I guess. Moscow's also now the capital of Russia. Yes, it got moved. Also, time zones are made in the US by Congress, meaning now we just have the system we have today. With this also comes daylight savings, which would go into effect at the end of the month. You can also tell the war is running out and who's going to lose. That being Germany, spoiler alert, because they do have a large offense on the Western Front. That's kind of failing. More stuff with the Finnish Civil War, but now we have the Red Baron dying near the Somme. He was one of the skilled pilots for the German Air Force during World War I. So, they are definitely going to lose soon. Then we get 3 more countries. Write this down. Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. You got that? Okay, good. But holding on to the idea of 3, the assassinator of Franz Ferdinand also was killed in prison. He was only there for 3 years. Whoa, what a coincidence. Chevy gets bought out by General Motors, and so now they're a subsidiary. Congrats. Don't go making mid-quality cars now. Then not because of all of this, the Finnish Civil War comes to an end. Then the Sedition Act is passed in the US, meaning it's just the Espionage Act, but even more broad. This won't have any consequences for the future of how presidents run the country. No, that would never happen. You remember the Spanish flu? It is now kind of a pandemic. Hopefully, it doesn't affect the world for a long time. But one thing that won't is the brightest nova in space. It used to be Kepler 164's nova, but for the time being it now, V603 Aquiles. Bam, you got those names? Those are really cool names. The Allies also help in the Russian Civil War, so Germany doesn't have any influence there and can possibly make Russia an ally. So, influence. More ships are sunk, but Germany even tries to get ships that are sailing off of Cape Cod. Really, at this point, they're just spawn camping these ships. The British are told to help the White Russians, and also Lenin is wounded when an assassin fails to kill him. Big whoops for her. Fanny Kaplan should have tried harder, I guess. Now Britain's in Syria. Then the Kazan operation. This is just a 5-day event that basically says, who's the top dog? I guess we could put it that way. For the Russian Civil War in terms of power. By the way, it's the Red Army. Then there's a battle at essentially every point in the World War, not the Russian Civil War. But the main important part is the Damascus capture. Also around this time, power transfers in Germany. Also, Wilhelm II tries to make a more liberal government to try to make peace, so he really regrets his decision, I guess. Then more power changes happen in the Central Powers, especially with the fall of the Austria-Hungary Empire. Czechoslovakia also becomes its own country. Poland also gets a power transfer. And with that, we have November 11th at 11 a.m., World War I ends. Not officially yet, but it's a truce between every country involved. And that's it. So what does that mean? A lot of new republics, that's for sure. Austria, Czechoslovakia become new republics, and Poland has a second republic phase. Add Latvia to the new countries if you forgot, because it's independent now. But now Britain controls the Palestine region. Now the Paris Peace Conference. Most of that will be irrelevant anyways, so let's wait to see it. Also, Estonia is a new country now, so smile and wave for them. And to end the year off, the Georgian-Armenian War. Bam. Now, when a post-World War I society. 1919 is the one year of the decade that doesn't begin with anything really big. It's honestly German powers just switching. By the way, the party that shall not be named Inspiration Party begins around this time. So you can kind of see the bricks being placed for that. Then Theodore Roosevelt dies in his sleep, so the funeral is held for him. Then Dracula Land, aka Transylvania, is annexed by Romania. That's going to stick with them, because that's how you will remember them now. Estonia also tries to become a new country before the Great Flood. That isn't water in Massachusetts, specifically in Boston, where molasses floods the streets and leaves many buildings and people stuck. This also lasts for a day because that's just how molasses is. But then the Paris Peace Conference starts. And I'm not going over everything. Just take this map from Wikipedia to know the land stuff that really matters for the conference, and you'll be all set. Germany holds its first election with women's suffrage, and the Ebert team wins the election, but it's different than in the US. You see, there's no stupid system known as the Electoral College to get in people's way of actually having a popular vote. So in Germany, you have more than 2 parties and a popular vote. So there was no majority won per chance, but still the most people who voted got that party in. That's just how a popular vote works. Then the League of Nations is founded. Do not fret, kind viewer. This doesn't do anything important and could drastically be improved. So no need to remember it at all, because it doesn't matter and will become irrelevant soon. Then Russia tries to take Ukraine. Crazy how this happens around once every 100 years. It's just like tariffs. They just keep coming back every century. They keep fighting until they get Kiev. Enough about that. Enough. Then Oregon places a gasoline tax on, you guessed it, gas. Shocker. But then we get the most iconic national park ever, the Grand Canyon. A movement against Japan taking over Korea also happens. That doesn't matter because silence marcher. On March 1st as well, that happens. It's called the March movement or something. It had a name. It was the month. Then a lot of stuff was the Russian Civil War and a new attorney general. But wait, Mussolini is an important figure now. This is because he found an Italian fascist party in Milan, But luckily, we have a new name for the capital of Czechoslovakia. It's not called Bratislava. Or it is. That's the point. It's the new name. That's all you need to know. Also, you remember Pancho Villa? He's back. He goes to Parral in Chihuahua in Mexico and kills the mayor and his children. Not good. Hopefully he gets caught soon. There were protests in China over what they did to Zhao Bay in the Paris Peace Treaty. But luckily, the International Red Cross is also made. Netherlands gets full women's suffrage, BT dubs. The campus for UCLA is also formed. Not yet called UCLA, but still it's there in concept. It's there in spirit. Belgium gets mandates over East German Africa, but wait, drum roll for women living in the U.S. around this time. The 19th Amendment gets passed by Congress, just meaning states have to ratify it now. Then Villa's back, just doing his thing, attacking random civilians. Then luckily the Treaty of Versailles is officially signed, ending the war, because earlier it was just a ceasefire effectively. The day it's signed is also 5 years since Franz Ferdinand died. Just a little fun fact. Also, the International Labour Organization is founded under the League of Nations. Then the trek across the country is started. This is the alpha version of the highway system, by the way, so it's not fully developed. That gets fully made. Not fully made, but it's explored. They want to go cross-country. The Netherlands get 8-hour work days and free Sundays. Yay them. Wish that was still a thing here. The International Astronomical Union is founded, by the way. Nothing too major happens for a while, except for when the Communist Party of America is founded. Let's move past that. There's a hurricane, which is rare for this time period because they don't have like extreme climate change happening. It killed 600 in Florida. People, by the way, not houses. So larger numbers probably because it's harder to see them coming now. Then Austria-Hungary is separated into, you'll never believe it. Whoa, Austria and Hungary. Then Woodrow Wilson has a stroke. Totally can still run the office out. That's for sure. Just in time to see the start date for Prohibition, which is based on the 18th Amendment. First meeting of the International Labour Organization happens. Let's get workers right. Coal strike happens in the U.S., but wait, guys. We need that right now. We don't need that right now. Treaty of Versailles fails to get the vote needed to pass in the U.S. Senate. So it isn't ratified there. And then the Spanish flu pandemic comes to a close. Case closed and settled. Bam. Like, slam your briefcase on the floor now. Then a boring end to the year other than the U.S. deporting 249 people to Russia. And Babe Ruth being traded from the Red Sox to the Yankees. Also, the inflation rates in Germany went kind of crazy during this time, but let's hope that doesn't affect them later down the line. Overall, the 1910s kind of just set up Europe for a lot of post-war rebuilding and a bunch of things that they kind of had to reap what they sowed, I guess. But America, on the other hand, doesn't have to deal with all that war stuff, that post-war stuff, because, you know, giant ocean in between the continents. Or whatever. So in the next decade, you kind of get to see that difference in economies, especially between the Allies and the Central Powers. Winners and losers. You get to see the difference between winning, what it feels to win, and what it feels to lose. But that's for next time. Otherwise, this decade was filled with events, but mainly taken up by World War I by the end of it, because, you know, war is a big thing. But that's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pretty please.